You are awful. Like this is why I don't like you. I don't know why
This
we've
is
done a
why we
podcast.
brought back the top tens.
We have done 4 years of a podcast, and I have hated you more each and every episode. I don't know how we made it this far.
Well, now that I got you nice and riled
Well,
up, should
well,
we
and here's the
just
thing:
talk about number one?
all of that, and I'm still going to be more pissed off about what I have to talk about for number one, because none of my previous nine, or the other 240 or 330 designated players on the list, match up to my number one, who, as we know, is the consensus worst pick for MLS DP of all time, Metro and Red Bull's own Rafa Marquez. We've covered this before many times in early DP pod, but for our new listeners, here we go. After Red Bull saw designated player success with Thierry Henry and Juan Pablo Angel, they reached out to their friends at Barca for yet another one by the likes of Mexican center back Rafa Marquez. Red Bull Global at this point had not forgotten that we were their stepchild, so they were giving us money to spend on players, and they went and got Rafa Marquez and paid him $5 million a year for 2.5 years. The salary alone covers current Red Bull roster payments for like the last 6 years. You're looking at like $12.5 million that we just gave to one guy. But why is Rafa so terrible? If you bring up this name to any Red Bull fan or MLS fan for that matter, after they cringe at you with disgust, they will highlight one of many things. And I've gone to our friends at Metro Fanatic, who are no fans of his, and even have a list on their website, top 10 worst Rafa Marquez moments. And I will read you some of them right now. Breaking Shea Salinas' collarbone after body slamming him on a corner, earning a 3-game suspension. Watching multiple balls fly over his head, directly leading to goal, and instead of running back, standing there and pointing at somebody else saying it was your fault. The elitist mindset to think he was above playing at such a low level, to the point where he even gave a quote in an interview saying, "I think this is a team game, and unfortunately, there isn't an equal level between my teammates and I. I'm actually focusing on the whole back line. I'm actually focusing on my game. I'm focusing and performing at the highest performance at the highest level. That doesn't mean the whole back line can perform at the same level. That's the problem." He then threw a fit after losing to LA Galaxy in the 2012 Eastern Conference semifinals. Headbutt Landon Donovan, threw a ball at him. I'm sorry, no, that was a 2011, because 2012 is the worst day of my life. And I'm not going to go into play-by-play here. But as I've told many a guest who have been here to listen to my rant, this was the first time I've ever felt pain at a sporting event. I wasn't there, but I was watching it. This is the first time I've ever swore in front of my father. At this point, I was 15. Yeah, 12, 14, 15. So first time I ever swore in front of my father. And just the first time I've ever felt like a team has let me down, and I've been here ever since. So that's great. Here's basically what happened. In 2012, Red Bull played rivals DC United in the Eastern Conference semifinals. We were awarded a penalty kick after Kenny Cooper was taken down by Bill Hamid, led to a straight red card. We scored. Mark Geiger needed to be the center of attention, wanted all the cameras on him. He made us retake it, and we missed. However, we're still up a man with 30 minutes to go. Great, awesome. We're feeling great. 10 minutes later, Rafa Marquez goes into the single dumbest challenge I've ever seen in my life, sliding in on, I believe, Chris Pontius. About 4 seconds after he's given the ball away, takes him out while he's already on a yellow, gets himself sent off, loses our man advantage. DC United go on to score, and whatever, Metro lose. We've been here, done that, right? That is just the memory of all of these lists that I've got here. You see bad DPs in this league sometimes. You see DPs who think that they are better than what they are playing with. You see DPs that are lazy and don't want to work. But never has there ever been the perfect combination of all three, except for one. Rafa Marquez, the single worst designated player signing of all time. Drop the mic.
Yeah. I mean, I would agree with, on an objective basis, he is by far number one. I'll get to my subjective first or later, but Connor, if you want to, add anything to that, I'm assuming that's who you have at number one.
It is who I have at number one, but I don't really think I can add anything else to that. Not that I haven't heard that speech before. I think I've heard it a number of times at this point. But
Connor's smart enough to know I don't like him, but he knows that if he messed that up by the time I got back to Long Island later next week, he'd be in for it. So Smart man.
Yeah. I think
Smart
he
man.
would actually go solo on the podcast if I didn't put Rafa Marquez number one.
I would start recording things, just not tell you, and be like, "Oh,
Yeah.
have you prepped this episode yet? Sorry, we've already recorded it." All right, Eli, who do you got? You're as an LA fan. Can I take a guess?
You know who it is.
I feel like I don't.
I-
Oh, yes, I do. Yes, I do. Go ahead.
So it's embarrassing for me right now because this player is actually technically in the best form of his MLS career. So it's a little awkward with that, awkward timing. However, I always make these videos saying these players are flops and then they prove me wrong. And I do an apology video saying they proved me wrong. But this guy, it's going to take a lot. He's going to have to go double-digit goals and assists this year to give me that. And I'm throwing away all of my criteria for this player because some would say, even despite him being a massive name, expectations weren't that high based on, his previous club that he was with and what he did for them. So expectations weren't high, but this is a signing the Galaxy should have never made, ever. Douglas Costa, like, what are you doing? I mean, Taylor Twellman, that stuff. This is a player that came in, thinks he's above the league. Like you mentioned with Rafa Marquez, I wouldn't say to the extent of Rafa Marquez, but this is a guy that when he knows that he has a vacation planned for next week, he gets himself red carded in the very last minute. It happened last year when he did against Minnesota. And what happened was, he got this big suspension for, taking a guy down with like 10 seconds left in the match, right? And then next weekend, he's posted this beautiful Airbnb getaway, which he had to. Those are the type of Airbnbs you got to schedule like a year in advance. He knew that he had to miss that next game. And then this very same season, he does the same exact thing the weekend before the LA Galaxy have their most embarrassing performance in franchise history, which, the fans kind of wanted, against LAFC, because he knew that Coachella was the next weekend, so he needed to go. He had that VIP pass, we already know. Douglas Costa was the biggest waste. When the team needs him most, and he knows that the team needs him most, then he's just never there. He doesn't care. And you know what's even more effed up? I know Galaxy family members of players that struggle to get seats, yet Douglas Costa's wife gets a suite all to herself at Dignity Health Sports Park because he's a designated player. And does that have to do with on the field? No, but it just tells you like the type of guy he is, the type of person he is, what he's here in MLS to accomplish, which is just to collect a paycheck, to be a fat, lazy bastard. And it sucks because he's actually playing pretty well right now, and I got to give him a little credit for that. But either way, he's going to have to do so much to earn my respect. And I didn't even mention the fact that he has an arrest warrant right now in Brazil because he is a terrible father. He hasn't paid his child support. And, the second he steps back in Brazil, he's going to prison. So I get that Rafa Marquez is the number one objectively, but subjectively, I've never hated a soccer player more than I hate Douglas Costa. And I had to put him at number one. When you told me this was the list we were doing, I didn't even think about it. He was number one for me. And, in an era of terrible flops, especially for DPs for the Galaxy, to me, he is the absolute pinnacle that shows this front office has no idea what it's doing. And it's the part of the reason why I was so Klein out. Everyone was so Klein out with the Galaxy. It's signings like this that have made us the laughing stock of the league. And yeah, Douglas Costa, number one for me.
I will tell you, the second that he leaves MLS, whether it be retire or move, number two. I will never displace Rafa Marquez at one, but number two, without a shadow of a doubt. I mean, we talked about it when they signed him. Like, we're out here trying to shed, and we don't really need to shed it because we've never been a retirement league, but we're trying to shred that whole thing. And he shows up and is acting like this, and it doesn't do well for us. It's the same thing with, Insigne and Bernadeschi coming out and talking negatively about what's going on here. And I'm not saying you have to love every minute of it here, but you're a professional. You know, you're trying to help what we're doing here as a unit, as a collective. And Douglas Costa just said, "Screw it, I'm gonna do whatever I want to do and move on with my life." And completely agree with where you're at there, my friend.
Also, to add on to it, because I just thought about it, he talked about wanting to go back to Gremio because he wanted to get redemption with the fan base when he needs to redeem himself to the Galaxy fan base. It's just so ridiculous, the stuff that comes out of this dude's mouth. And I don't want to talk about people that I've talked to, but everyone that I know at the club is like, we don't even care about him. Like, he is just so irrelevant to us because he's so awful to us. He treats us poorly. He's just not a great presence. And we know that he's there to collect a paycheck. And the Galaxy desperately need wingers. They need their wingers to produce. And, you know, he's producing well, at least within the last few weeks. But before then, I mean, this man, and, you know, he had a 4 to 6 week injury and he didn't get injured. He just had a broken ego and hurt feelings. That's what he was out with. So I don't get it. Why this dude's still here. Everyone's dying for him to be bought out, but the Galaxy are in a situation where they literally can't afford to buy anyone out because they can't replace him. So, yeah, Douglas Costa for me, number one. Rafa Marquez, you know, everyone knows he's number one, but, you know, I got to be subjective with this.
I'm all for it. I'm here for it. And even if I were to take players who were already in the league, he'd be up for sure. Connor, you wanna add anything onto that?
I know you keep saying it's like your subjective number one, but the more you keep talking about it, I feel like the better the case you're making for him to actually be like a number one spot in this list. I feel you're persuading me more and more every time you talk about it.
I have stories beyond stories about this guy, and I'm so glad I don't have to be in a locker room with him. That's for sure. And I'm so glad that I'm not, you know, a family member of another player. Cause like I said, you know, Galaxy are really good at giving away seats to people. And, you know, a lot of players' moms and families just can't even get seats and can't even fit into the player suite. Cause there's a player suite and then there's the Douglas Costa wife suite by herself. It's ridiculous.
So bad. That is
Chicharito also has his own suite, but like, you know, poor Chicharito with the injury. We love him. You know, we love him.
And he came out very much like David Villa did for New York City. And yeah, he played at the highest level all over the world and was a big star. He does not quit. This guy is not one of those Andrea Pirlo type of walk around and whatever happens. This dude, Chicharito, fights, man. I love watching him play. The same way I loved watching David Villa play as a Red Bull fan. I was like, man, it's good to see somebody show up and actually fight, because that's what we're looking for. So, yeah, he can get a pass. Douglas Costa, not so much.